Friends, you are welcome. And in this video, we are going to be creating a web page completely from scratch. So we want to create a simple WordPress homepage from scratch. So because of that, I have deleted our training folder because I want to start everything from the very beginning. So I'm already in my Visual Studio environment where we do our coding. So if you are just joining in this video now, this training now, or you just bumped into this video, please do well to watch our previous videos on HTML and CSS so that you can understand what we are doing, because in this video I will not be going back again to talk about the nitty-gritty of web development. But what we just want to do here is to create a simple WordPress homepage from scratch. Okay, so and also do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get information and get updates on our videos and trainings on web development and programming and other areas in web technology. So quickly, let's get into our coding. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close this welcome screen. I'm going to close it. I'm going to go to File and go to Open Folder in order to create the folder for our training. Okay, so I'm going to create that folder in my local disk. That folder is also going to be in my folder which I use for development, which is this folder, web dev. So in this web dev, you can see that I have created other projects that I've been working on before, but now I want to create a new folder for a new project, and I'm going to call it, as usual, training. I'm going to call it training and then save it. After I've saved, I will click on it and select the folder. So that means that is the folder that Visual Studio will be seeing for our project. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is to add, because the welcome screen appeared again. I'm going to still close it, but you can now see that we now have a folder here, and that folder is called training. All right, so this is the folder we'll be creating our files in. So but before we create our files, I want to add some images in our folder, because we are going to be using two images, a background image and a logo. So I'm going to go to my pictures and then pick the two images I want to use, and these are the two images, this WordPress and this WordPress. So I'm going to copy them, Ctrl+C for copy. All right, so I'm going to go back to our web dev training and then go to training. In our training, we are going to create a new folder within that folder we created before and call it images. Okay, so within that image folder, we will now paste our two images. So but for the purpose of clarity, I want to change the name of this one because I want to use this one for background. So I'm going to rename it and just call it background. All right, so that's the background. So now, having created our images in our folder, we can now go back to our Visual Studio Code, and then if you go here, you can now see that the folder has automatically appeared here, and this contains our images, and you can see those two images here. But that is not what we're working on now. The first thing we're going to do is to create our file, our HTML file and our CSS file. So you hover on this icon here, and you can see new file. When you click on it, we will name our first file, which is index.html. all right, so we click enter to save it, and we create our second file. Sorry, I created this index.html inside the image folder, so it shouldn't be. It should be inside the main folder. All right, so within our training folder here, I'm going to create a new file and call it index.html, and then click enter to save it. All right, let's view our folder to know what happened. You can see that this thing is opening in the image folder. But what I want to do is to create the file in our training folder. All right, so let me create it again. This is our new file. All right, let me just delete this image folder first and create our files first, because that's giving me some problem. So I'm going to delete this image folder. Later we'll come back to create it, but for now you can see there's nothing here again. So I'll create my first file, which is index .html, and then I click enter. And if you go to our folder, you will see that the file is now appearing in our training folder. And then the next we're going to do is to create our CSS file, which is styles.cxs. okay, so you can see that the icon for HTML and CSS is not the same thing. So we have created two files, and we go to our folder. You can see that these two files are now appearing here, index and styles. All right, now the next we're going to do is to now go to our folder and create our image folder, like I said before, and create images. And then within that image, I will paste the images we copied before, and I will rename it, like I said before, I will rename it to be background. Okay, so we can now close this. We are done with this. Now you can see that within our training folder, you now have an image folder which contains two images and two files outside of the image folder. All right, so now I'm going to drag this to this side. So that I can review my CSS file and my HTML file at once, and I'm going to also close this to make our screen bolder. All right, so now what do? We start creating our codes. Now, first of all, I told you that to create a shortcut for the website structure is Shift and then this exclamation mark, and then you select this first one, and it will automatically put all these things for you. But if you're not using Visual Studio Code, look at this code, just write it yourself in whatever development IDE you are using. So now let's open our file. Now if you open this file, let's go to view. When we go to view and we say, let's just click on run. Now when we click on run, we run without debugging because we don't need that. So we click on run so that we can open our file in a browser. Okay, or better still, I can use my live server. Okay, I want to open the file with Chrome, so I will click on Chrome, and it's going to open the file in our Chrome browser. It's going to open the file in our Chrome browser. You can see the file now has opened in our Chrome browser, and if you look at this, you can see that the title in the title bar is document. As you can see, that is because the title here is also document. You can see that the title here is document. So we're going to change our title and call it our WordPress page. All right, so if you say our WordPress page, now if you go and refresh, like I'm not using live server. If I use live server, this thing will be refreshing automatically. So if I click Ctrl R, you can see that our WordPress page is now the title. So the next thing we do is to link our CSS. This CSS file, we have to link it so that when we're working on our CSS, it will be reflecting here. So within our head, we're going to put a link to our CSS. You can see there are many options. So this is link CSS, and we're going to change the name. You can see that this is the name of the CSS file, but here you can see that the name is styles, but here it is just giving you style. So we're going to add an S here to make sure that the name is correct. So that with that, we have linked our CSS file to our HTML file, and then we start writing our code within our body. So the first thing I want to do is to give a background to my body. So I'm going to say body. I'm going to say body in my CSS, and then I add a background image. I'm going to add a background image, and then we use URL, which means Universal Resource Locator. So Universal Resource Locator is telling you where is the image located, and we're going to say the image is located in a folder called images. Okay, and then you can see that it's giving you the option of the image folder now, and then you can now see many other images in that place. Okay, so I will now say background. Okay, because that's the name of our image. That's the name of our background image. All right, so let me refresh to see if that has happened. Fortunately, I don't know why. Okay, background.jpg. all right, background.jpg. Let's refresh and see if it's now there. Something is wrong with our image folder. Let me go to that image folder and see what's happening. All right, so this is our image. and okay, it named it background 1 and background 2. All right, so I'm going to rename this. We're going to rename this because I actually want to rename it to be background. All right, only background is okay. Now I'm going to put this to be logo because this the image I want to use as my logo. All right, so let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. Let's clean all of this, and then we call on our images again. You see, here is our images, and here is that image background.jpg. okay, so our image is now called. So if we refresh now, the image should be showing. The image should be showing here. I don't know why that's happening. Styles, let me remove this thing here to see what happens. All right, so you can see that we now have a background image, but the problem now is that the background image is duplicated, so and this does not look good. So what I'm going to do is to work on the background and say, first of all, background I'm going to say background repeat, and I will say no repeat. Okay, so if you view, you will see, if you refresh again, you see that the image is now 1, but we need this image to cover the entire place. This one image, we want it to cover the entire background, so we will say background size, we say cover. All right, so I will also want to add background position. I also want to add background position, so that I will say background position should be relative. Okay, relative. So if you refresh our browser, you will see that the image will now cover the entire background. Okay, so what do we do again? I will want that, because I'm going to be creating content, I want this background to be fixed, so that when we create our content, this background will stay at one place while our content will be scrolling. So I'm going to say background attachment, and I will say the background attachment, it should be fixed. All right, so we have done our body. The next we're going to do now is I will want to give my body a width. I will say width, and I will say 100 view width. VW is view width, which means that any screen on which you are going to view this web page, because this is a laptop, is going to cover 100% of the view width, which is this and this. But if you are viewing on a mobile phone, it's also going to give you 100% of the mobile phone's view width. So that's how to make your website responsive, so that it can fit in to any web page, to any mobile device. So now let me make this to be smaller, so that you will see what I mean. So if I begin to drag this, you can see that the image will be shifting by itself. Okay, now you can see that there is no height. The height is not here. So I'm going to also say that our height should be 100% view height. Okay, so let's refresh this. You can see now that the image has now covered the whole place. So even as I'm adjusting, you see, as I'm adjusting the screen, the image will be adjusting to fit the screen, which means that any screen you view this website, this is going to fit in to that mobile device. All right, so let's close this. The next we're going to do now is to create our main section, which is div. I'm going to use div to create our main section, and then this div, we're going to give it an ID of main section, So this is where I want to be putting my content. I want to create another section at the body, so that is where we'll be putting our content. So within our div, we're going to have a header. We're going to have a header where we put our nav bar and the rest of them. So you can see that when I do this, it automatically adds the closing tag. So these are header, and we will leave it like that. Now let's color our div. Let's give our div a color, our boss a color. So okay, I'm going to declare our main section, because the ID selector is hash. So we're going to say main section. and then we begin to put our properties. Now first of all, we're going to give it our main section, we're going to give it a width, and I'm going to say I want just 70%. Right, I just want 70%, which means our message, I want the width 70% of the entire screen. That is what I want, because I wouldn't want it to cover the whole screen, so I want 70% of the entire screen. All right, so now what do? We will give it height. My height, I will say it should fit to content. Fit to content means that as we are adding elements into this div element, is going to be adjusting the height to fit in the content we are adding. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is to put a background color. Sorry, I make that mistake all the time. A background color, and we're going to give it a deep blue, a very deep blue. Now the blue is going to be very deep. I'm going to drag this to the very deep blue, and then I'm going to make it a bit transparent so that we can see the images from it. We can see our background, through it. Okay, now let's refresh and see what we have here. All right, let's refresh and see what we have here. This is not what's happening. Okay, because we have not added any content to our height, so but for now let's just give our content a height. Let's say 100% of the height. All right, so 100% of the height. Let's now see what happens. You can now see that we now have another section, another box, which has a deeper blue background, and then we can see that because we made it transparent, we are seeing the WordPress background through it. So but I want to make this particular section to be at the center of the whole screen, so I'm going to say margin. I'm going to say margin left. I'm going to say give me 50%. All right, let's see what happens. All right, that is too much. Okay, sorry, because this is 70%, the width is 70%, and this is 100% view width. So I'm going to say just give me because we have already taken 70% of it, so I want it to move 15%. All right, 15%, so that we will have the whole 100%. All right, now what happened here is that this is 70% of the screen. Now here is 15%, this side is 15%, and so the remaining side is also 15%, as you can see. So we now have the full screen 70. The main section contains 70%, while the other place that is not as a main section is 15% by the left and the right. But if you look up here, you will see that we have a space at the top here, but I would want this to stick to the bottom appropriately. So we use what we call a universal selector, which I've taught you before in our previous video. So I'm going to add the universal selector. I'm going to add the universal selector here. I'm going to add a universal selector, which is right, and then we say our margin should be 0. Our margin should be 0. Our margin should be 0, and our padding as well should be 0. So this is universal selector. It affects the entire web page. All right, so if we refresh our browser, you can see that this thing is now stuck appropriately to the top of the screen, and this looks more beautiful. So the next we're going to do is to put a header where we will have our logo and our navigation buttons. All right, our navigation buttons. So within the header here, we have to give our header a background. We have to declare our header, and then we say width. The width of our header should be 100%. Of course, you know that it's not 100% of the entire screen, because this header is inside the div section, so it is going to cover 100% of the width of the div section where it is into of its parent element. So let's also give a height. We say our height, we give our height 300 pixel. All right, the next we're going to do is to give it a background color. a background color, and we also give it a very deep blue, but this time around it's not going to be transparent. Okay, we're going to give it a very deep blue, but the background will not be transparent. If I want the background to be transparent, I'm going to drag this. You can see that the more you drag it down, the more transparent it becomes, but I'm going it to be the full color. All right, so let's see what happens in our browser. Okay, you can see that we now have the header, but that header, the height is too much for what we want to do. So I'm going to say 200 pixel, rather 200 pixel will do. Let me refresh. All right, okay, so that is that. So what next do I want to do now? I will begin to add my logo. So within our header, we will add our logo. So we add our image element, and we're going to give it the ID of logo, and then we're going to call our alternate text is, which means what is going to be shown if the image cannot be found. We're going to say logo of WordPress. Logo of WordPress. So if we refresh here, we will see something. We will see something is here. There is actually a white. There is also actually a black something here. Let me try and highlight it so that you see that there is a text here. Okay, so you can see that there is a text here. Because the browser cannot find the image yet, it is showing the text logo of WordPress, because that's what we typed. So let me make this to be logo of WordPress. But now let's call on our image and our images, and then we call on the logo. All right, so we now have the logo here. If you refresh, you're going to see that the image will now appear, but the image is still very big for a logo. So we're going to resize our image by coming here and saying logo. We're going to use the ID selector and say logo. Now we say the width of our logo. The width of our logo should be 70 pixel, and the height of that logo as well. The height of that logo as well should be 70 pixel. All right, so let's refresh. You see that the image has now become smaller, but I want that this image should be circled, and then it should be at the center here. So what else am I going to do? I will come. We are still working on our images. Now we say border radius. We say 20. Let me say 40 pixel. I think that should round the image up appropriately. You can see that our image is now rounded up. It has removed all the border. It has shrinked all the border. So I want to move this image to the center here, and I also want to make it move a bit further away from the top, because it is so much stuck at the top and stuck by the left. So I'm going to, now we're going to use the principle of inheritance. The principle of inheritance to move our image to the center. I think HTML6 image as text. All right, so within the main section, within our header, we're going to say our text should align center. Our text should align center, and I think that is going to affect the image. And let's refresh. You can see that our image is now on the center. It means that even when we put our nav bar, because it is inside that header, the text will automatically be aligned on the center using the principle of inheritance. Inheritance means that if you add an element, if you add a property to a parent element, then the child element, if it can work with that property, is going to inherit that property. So because this logo is inside our header, we declare text align here, and it moved the image to the center. All right, so we can as well copy this text align and put it in this logo. It will still do the same thing, but because I want that when I'm working on my nav bar should automatically fit to the center, so that I won't have to be writing code for each one of them. So now what I'm going to do, I will say margin top. Let me say 20 pixel to move my image away from the top. You can see that the image has now come down a bit. All right, so that is it. All right, so we have now worked on our logo, and then our logo is now, the size is now resized, and the border radius rounded, and then the margin top is simply the distance between this logo and here. So the margin, this space here is the margin top. All right, So the next thing we're going to do is to add our navigation bar. All right, so within our header as well, we're going to put a nav. Now in our nav bar, we're going to call that nav bar. We're going to give that nav bar an ID of top nav. All right, an ID of top something is type something. An ID of top nav. All right, so in this nav bar now, we're going to have our URL list, which is the list, our navigation property. So URL list, we are going to have our anchor tags inside our URL list, and then these anchor tags are now what we will have. So first of all, we have home. So let me copy this, let me duplicate all of them, Ctrl C. All right, so we have four elements now. So let me make all of them to be well indented. So we have home, and then we'll say about us. Then we say contact us, and then finally we have our blog. Okay, our blog. Okay, so let's view our browser and see what we have. We can now see that we have a navigation here. All right, this is our navigation, those links we added. We have not referenced it to anywhere yet, so for now we'll just put hashtag in all of them because we are not trying to link them anywhere, but though as we go on we'll try linking one of them to see what we mean. All right, so now with that, we can now change the height of our header because we can see that after adding our this thing, there is still space. But first of all, let me give a width and height to our nav bar. All right, so I'm going to say top nav, and then I will say the width of our top nav should be 100% of its container's width. All right, 100% of its container's width, not 100% of the entire screen. 100% of its container's width, which is the header. All right, 100% of its container's width, and then we say its height should be, let's give it 100 pixel. All right, so let's refresh. Okay, we have not given it a background color. Let's give it a lighter blue. Let's give it a background color that is lighter. Okay, background color, let's give it blue. All right, blue. Okay, and that blue, I want that blue to be a bit deeper but not too deep than the first one. All right, so I'm going to keep it here. Okay, let's refresh. You can see that we now have a navigation here. All right, we have a navigation here. So now you can see that this thing is stuck here. The pixel for that nav bar is quite much. The height, so let me say 70 pixel, though we are still going to alter that. All right, now we can now say that our header's height should fit to content. Since we have added content to it, so fit to content, you will see that the extra height will be removed. Okay, so it is now fitting exactly to the whole content, which is the logo and the URL list, that is our navigation links. All right, so I'm going to also move my top nav away a bit from the logo. I will say margin top, I will give it 5 pixel just to move it away a bit. All right, so to move it away a bit from the logo here. I'm going to now work on the anchor tags in my URL list. All right, so I'm going to say nav URL anchor. So we're going to work on the anchor tag that is inside our URL list, that is inside our nav bar. All right, so I'm going to give it color of white, I'm going to say font size of 25 pixel, and then we're going to, after the font size, we are going to change the font family. I'm going to change the font family, and I want to use this Arial, Helvetica, sans serif. All right, so I want to use this. So now let's view and see how far we have gone. You can see that the color, the font, and everything has now increased, but it's still very much stocked and they are compacted together. So the next we're going to do, we're going to say test decoration none, to remove the underlining of it. That underlining you see there, we're going to see margin. We're going to see margin left 10 pixel, and then margin right 10 pixel. So that's going to spread them apart. All right, you can see that you can now have a margin here, a margin here, and a margin, and the margin also at the left and the right of them. And then we say margin top, we say 10 pixel as well. All right, let's watch. This thing is not moving away. Okay, let's use margin. Let us say, okay, I want to do something to know whether one margin can work on all of them. So I will say simply, because when you declare only one margin, it will work both on the left, right, and top and bottom. So let me say 15 pixel for all of them. So let me refresh. You can say it only worked for the left and the right, because I don't know why. So but I'm going to use padding. I think padding is what should do that. Padding top, I'm going to say 15 pixel as well. All right, so let's see what happens. This should move away. All right, okay, let's work on our UL. Let's work on our nav. Let's work on our navigation. All right, so let's work on our UL list alone. I think that should work in our UL list, nav UL list, because here we are talking about one anchor tag. All right, so that's why it's not working. So but we want to work on the entirety of the anchor tags which are inside the UL list. So we should be working with the UL list for that margin top. We should be working with our UL list for that margin top. So we're going to say margin top. We're going to say 15 pixel. All right, so let's see now. That should work out. This should work out. So this is UL. Let me remove this now. See what happens. Okay, the padding top works for it. So we now have a padding top for our UL. Even if we say nav UL, is still the same thing, because it's still the same nav bar inside the UL list. All right, so we can see that we now have beautiful icons here for different web pages. So we have home, about, contact us. All right, so what next we are going to do? I want to put a border. Under this our nav. So I'm going to go to my top nav. I will say border bottom, and I will say it should be solid, and the width should be 2 pixel, and then orange 2 pixel, orange red. All right, so when we refresh, we're going to have a border here of 2 pixel, and the color is orange red. That looks very beautiful. All right, so I also want to add a margin here, because you can see that the height of our logo, the margin at the top is not equal to the margin below. So we're going to work on our logo again. Since we put margin top to be 20 pixel, I'm also going to put our margin bottom to be 20 pixel, but rather I want to reduce it to 15 pixel because that 20 pixel seems very much for me. That seems so much. All right, let me make this 15 pixel. All right, so let's see what we have. All right, you see our logo is now better off at the center. All right, now we will go on to add some paragraph because it's a very simple web page. Having added our URL list, the next thing we now move away from the header because we have added everything we need to add to the header. From here to here is that header because that logo, the navigation, the URL list, and the anchor tags, and all of these are all within the header. All right, so even if I add this border to our header, is going to be in the same place since the header is fit to content. All right, so even if I move this away from here, let me copy this, let me cut this and go to my header and paste it and go and put it in my header. All right, first of all, let's refresh and see that the thing has gone out. All right, so now, but if I put it here, it will give you the same result. Why? Because that header is fit to content. So this is the last of its height, so it is the same thing with the last of the height of the nav bar. Okay, so the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to add the title to our body. So we're going to move away now. I'm going to move away now from our header and go outside of the header to put a title. I'm going to give a title of H1, and I'm going to say welcome to our WordPress page. All right, so let me see what happens here. Let's refresh because now we have a very big welcome to our WordPress page, but I want to make this to be break up here, so that this one will now move to the bottom, and then I also want to move it to the center and move it away from the top because it is stuck at the top now. All right, so I'm going to put a break tag here. We use BR. This is the break tag, and if you refresh now, you will see that it's going to break up here. So we work on our, let me give it an ID. Let me give it an ID of title. All right, so now I can now come here and work and say title in our CSS, and then I will say the color of our title. The color of our title should be white, and then the margin of the top, let it be 30 pixel to move away a bit, and then I'm going to say test align center. All right, test align center. Okay, let's refresh. You can see what we have here now. Welcome to our WordPress page. Now, if I do not want all this to be here, I can use the principle of inheritance to now, if I move this test align center here and the color to our div, all right, because this is our div. All right, our div element, that is our main section, is going to affect it based on the principle of inheritance. So if I go to main section and then say, sorry, I didn't copy it. I didn't copy everything. Control X. All right, Control X. Then I come to my main section and then put it here. You will see that the result will remain the same, except that it's going to alter the margin top. You can see that the text is still aligned center and everything, but this margin top is not going to work is not going to work for it, because that margin top will be affecting the main section itself. All right, so we're going to put, the only thing I'm going to put at our title is margin top. All right, so that the margin will now be top. I'm just trying to show you the principle of inheritance. If we like, we can as well put it where we put it before. They are all the same. All right, now that we have done this, we want to put a paragraph. Now if I add margin top, to my body, it will also somehow be affecting our paragraph, but let's not do that, so that we will not get confused. All right, now we add a paragraph. After our title, we add just a brief description of our website. I'm going to use a dummy text. All right, now that we're going to put some paragraph and put some dummy text, and we're going to put, let me say, dummy text of 50 words. So let's refresh. You can see that we now have a dummy text here, and then we're going to make the color of the dummy text to be red. So this is just like a description of the website. All right, so you can see that because in our body, in our main section, there is text align center here. You can see that the text is automatically align center, but I want to work on the paragraph more so that it can compress a bit. So I'm going to say paragraph, because that's probably the only paragraph I'm going to be working on. But let me make it more specific and say okay, let's give it an ID and say an ID of P. All right, so now I'll come here and say, I will say P, and then I will give it margin left and right. I'll give it margin so that the margin will work for all of them. So I'll give it the margin of 100 pixel. Let's see what happens. You can see that the margin worked for both the top, the side, and even the bottom. There's a margin at the bottom here. All right, so that is just that. So let's maybe increase the text of our paragraph. Let's increase the text of our paragraph. I don't want to make it Lorem 100. Okay, let's say Lorem 100 so that it will add 100 words. So let's refresh. You can see that this is better off. All right, now that we have our text here, I want to change the color of this text to orange red. I will say color should be orange red. Let's see how that looks. All right, so I think I love it this way. Now the last thing we're going to do is to add a button and then a footer. All right, so we're going to now put a button. We're leaving the paragraph and we say button, and we give it an ID as well. I like giving this ID because I want to work specifically. So I will say button, the ID of button. So I will say now within my button, I'm going to have an anchor tag because a button should lead to somewhere. So I'm going to have an anchor element, and I'm going to say talk to us. Now I'm going to just put my email address so that somebody can now talk to me. If he clicks on that link, he's going to take the person to send me an email. So I will say so this is my email, and then we have a button now. Let's refresh. You can see that we have a button now here below. And why is there this space here? Because when I gave margin to this particular paragraph, it gave it a margin below. So this is the 100%. This is the 100 pixel that I gave to this particular thing. So that's why it pushed this button to down. All right, so we're going to work on our button now, and in our button we're going to say that the width and I want the width and the height of our button to fit to content. And then I'm going to say the height of our button as well should fit to content. All right, should fit to its content. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to give a background to our button. To give a background a background color to our button. Now I'm going to give it let me give it a white background. Let me give our button a white background, and then let's see what we have here. Okay, it's white already. All right, so next I'm going to work on the text inside our button. And because we say that the height and the width of this button should fit to content, it means that as we are increasing the font of the text, the button will be adjusting itself to fit to its content. So we are going to say the anchor tag inside our button. We are going to say button A. So we are working on the anchor tag that is inside the button. This is a nested declaration. All right, we say font size. We're going to say font size, and we give it 20 pixel, and then we say text decoration to remove this underline, because if you watch it, you see that the text is underlined. So we're going to use text decoration to remove that underline in there. All right, text decoration we say none. So we can now refresh, and we see that immediately we increase the size of the font size of the text inside the button. The button itself adjusted its size. All right, so if we make it 25 pixel here, it's going to also adjust. You see what is happening. So but I don't like this color. I want my button to have this color. Okay, let's leave it that way. I want the button to have a deeper blue color and to be spread a bit. So I'm going to say the padding will be 10 pixel, because if you watch here, you will see that this text is just so much thick. So I want some space around it. So I'm going to refresh. I'm going to see that there is now space at the top and the bottom, the left and the right. So we're going to add the border radius to our button to make it look more like a button. So we go to our button. We go to our button, and then we say border. We say border radius, and we give it a 20 pixel. Let's see what that does. All right, so you can now see that our button now has a border radius of 20 pixels. So again, I want to change the color of my anchor tag in the button and say color. As a color, I'm going to make it blue now, but I want the blue to be deep, to be a bit deep. So I'm going to drag this here. I want this blue to be a bit deep. Okay, let's see what happens. You can see that is now a bit deep. I also want to work on the border of my button to give it a border color. So I'll go to my button and say border. When I say border, I will say it should be solid of 2 pixel, and it should be orange red. All right, so let's see. Okay, so that is it. We have a beautiful web page now, and then we have a beautiful button here, and it's clickable. So, and it's clickable to my email. So the next I'm going to do is to add target blank here, because if I click on this now, it's going to move me away from the page where I am, and we don't want that to happen, because if you're creating a website and when people click a button, it will leave, the person will leave your page. You will not have much views. So we're going to add target blank to it, so that it can open it in a new tab. So we say target, and we say blank. All right, so let's see what happens, and let's refresh and see what happens. Now if I click this, you see that it does not leave my page, rather it opened that new link in another tab. So the person is still on your page and can still come back to it. All right, so that is that. So the final thing I want to do is to add the footer. After the button, we will have a footer. We will have a footer here. Let me add the footer, and I will say footer. I will say footer, and then within my footer, we're going to have some things. I'm just going to have a copyright text within my footer. So I will say, say footer, and then I'm going to give it a background color. background color of my footer. I want to make it deep blue as well. I want to make it a deep blue, so I'm going to drag this and bring it to the deepest of blue. Alright, so and then we're going to give it a width and a height. We say width, of course the width should be 100% of its container, so we say 100%. Alright, so and again we say the height, let's just give the height 100 pixel. Now let's see what we have here. Let's see what we have here. You can see now that if you scroll down, we have a footer. Now do you observe something? That because in our background, in the background of our body, like I said earlier, we put that our background attachment should be fixed. So you can see now that as we are scrolling, you can see that it's only the center that is scrolling, while the background remains static. All right, so this is it. Now you can see that our button is stuck here, so I want to move this footer, and within my footer I'm going to say a margin top. I'm going to put margin top to my footer to move it away. I will say margin top. Now I will say margin top, I want 100 pixel. I want 100 pixel. So let's see. You now see that our footer moved below. So now we can now work. We can see that while we put the footer to be 100 pixel, the height of our main section did not reach it. So we go to our main section, at the height of our main section, and we are going to give the height to fit to content. You can see that I have now added the main section. I have added that the height should fit to content. So let me, before it was 100%, I just paused the video to check on something. So this is 100% that it was before. We gave it 100% before, and let's see our result. Our result was that the height did not cover the whole thing, so the height stopped here. This is 100 pixel. This is 100% of it. So but now when we say that the height should fit to content, it's going to adjust itself to now cover the whole thing. All right, so the next thing is to add a border top here to my footer to make it beautiful. So I'm going to go to my footer, and I'm going to say border top. Now I will say it should be solid of 2 pixel, and the color of that border should be orange red. What am I typing? Okay, let's go back to where we were. Should be orange red. Okay, so now let's see our result. We can now see that we have a border top. This is the top of the footer. We have a border top that makes our website very beautiful. So we now have a simple WordPress page created all from scratch. And let me hear what you think. Is it beautiful? But before we go, I want to add something to my footer. Okay, I will go to my footer and I will put just a copyright text, and I will say paragraph. I will say copyright 2021 to 21. Now put a special character. That special character, I will say copy the special character, and this is that special character. And then I will say what do I call it? I will say training. All right, let me just say training. All right, so this is just a copyright text. So let's see what we have here. You can see that we have a copyright text here, but we have to move it to the center. All right, so how do we move it to the center? Is by simple calculation. Is that the footer, the height of the footer is 100 pixel. So if we give the margin top of 50 pixel to our copyright, to our paragraph, is going to be at the center, because 50 pixel is the middle of 100. All right, so what are we going to do? I will say I will work on the paragraph that is inside my footer. I will say footer paragraph. That is, we are identifying that the paragraph we're working on is the paragraph inside the footer, so it's not going to affect the paragraph inside our main section. So we will say margin the margin top should be 50 pixel. All right, so let's see what happens. Let's see what happens here, and you see that it has come to the center of the footer. So this is a simple, remember in your footer you can add many things, but this is what we want to do mainly for this time. So with this, we just created a simple WordPress page from scratch, having a background, having a logo, and having this navigation. But we didn't add any link. Let's just try to add a link to our About Us so that you can see that this thing works. So in our About Us, I'm going to just link our About Us to, let me say, https www.gogo.com. all right, so now we have linked it to somewhere, and then we're going to add target blank so that it will not move us away from our page. Sorry, I'm going to add target blank as a property, target that would select blank. All right, so if we go here, we refresh, we only added to About Us. So if we click on About Us, you can see that it's going to go to gogo.com, but because we don't have internet, it didn't open it. So with that, now that means that all the pages you see here as a website, I just created the home page. So which means I'm going to create another file. So if I want to create an About Us page, a Contact Us page, our blog page, I'm going to come to our file here. I'm going to come to our folder here and create a new file and call it let's say about.html. all right, so that we create a new file, and then we will start working on that About Us. We will create its content and create its own CSS and create its own CSS as well. So that's just how it works. We create about CSS. Okay, so but then I wouldn't want to create that page because it's not necessary. I just want to create our first home page from scratch. So I will delete this, and we still have our folder, our main files. So you can see with that we have created a beautiful home page from scratch. So I want to know, what do you think? Does it look beautiful? When you tried it out, did it work for you? Your challenges as you are doing it, please drop it in the comment section so that others can know your challenges, and then I will also try to help where I can help. So that is that. In our next video, I want to do something for you, which is I want to show you how to create a one-page website. So I want you to watch the next video on how to create a one-page website. Now, what do I mean by one-page website? Briefly, I can decide not to create these pages separately. I can decide to create all of them as a section within this particular page. All of them, this About Us, Contact Us, our blog, they are all going to be on this one page. But when we are going to click on our link, it's going to take us to that section, to just scroll us to that section. So that is what we call a one-page website, a website where all the contents are all in one page, and we use link to reference to each of the sections to scroll it up and to scroll it down. So that is all. So we watch the next video, and then you tell me what you think, and then that ends it for now. All right, try it out and see how far you can go with this. Thank you.